Welcome back to the Twin Times Podcast, episode 53. Today we have a special guest who we've interviewed before. Her name is Melati Wijsen. She's a climate change activist and recent author as well of this book, Change Starts Now. You can buy it on Amazon and probably in any local bookstore that's near you. We talk about, obviously, her new book, Change Starts Now.
Well, I started when I was 12 years old. I'm 25 now. I just turned a couple months ago. And I think the reason why I wanted to write a book, specifically write a book with a lot of my lessons in it. As you know, the book has 100 of my lessons from 12 to 24 years old. And I think the reason why I wanted to do that is because I sat down one day writing a diary entry, as simple as that, of like, hey, this is what I experienced, this is what I learned from it. And after writing alone, I had a conversation with friends, and people were really like, there's so much that you would have learned across your decade-long activism journey. Why don't you want to share, how can you share that with more people in a different medium than, for example, on social media or through just conversations with friends? So I thought, maybe a book could be a cool way to embody all of those lessons learned.
We also talk about her early life and upbringing in Bali.
Those beautiful gifts my parents could have given me and my sister, because we were so incredibly connected to nature, to the community, to the village we grew up in. It was so beautiful and so safe as well, which I think is in the first 10 lessons, right? Safety and the feeling of being safe allows you to be curious, explore, be adventurous. And if we didn't have that in our growing up environment, I don't think we would have landed in the world of activism, because you need to be able to have that curiosity, to have that exploration mindset almost, but you can't do that if you don't feel safe. So Bali really, and especially the village where we grew up, really was a community that fostered and nurtured that aspect of our childhood.
We also talk about her building of her businesses.
So with Bioplastic Bags, we were traveling around to so many different classrooms around the world, and we shared what we were doing. And the number one question always came after that, which was, how can I do what you do? And it really didn't matter anymore whether we were in a classroom in Hong Kong or a classroom in the Maluku Islands. It was always, how can I do what you do? And so there was this growing interest in me of saying, okay, how do we create a platform where young people can learn from each other how to create change, right? I mean, so many people from our generation want to create change, and they have a good idea, but they don't know where and how to get it started. So what Youthtopia is, it's a learning platform where we've created over 300 programs with now a network of almost 10,000 students who access the learning material. These are master classes or workshops from young change makers who have created change, and they share their how. So it's really taking the lived experiences of change makers and sharing the blueprint of how they did it, so that the hope is other young people all around the world who are just starting their change making journey can learn how to as well.
And we also talk about her lifestyle as a change maker.
There's a lot of tough moments, and I think there are conversations where I get off stage, for example, and people really have this debate, this ongoing challenge as to why we shouldn't create change. There's still a lot of people out there who believe that climate change is a natural process that we have to go through, or that we should keep plastic because it's healthier than not using plastic. And everybody is entitled to their own views and perspectives, but I think what I have the biggest challenge, or where my exhaustion comes from after doing this for more than 10 years, is when there is an inability to sit down and listen to each other. So I think for me, the challenge has been to hold spaces for these conversations to happen. So that's for me a big challenge, to then keep on going, find motivation to not give up, because as hard as we try, as much as we keep going, if things are not actually being implemented to change everyday life, that just grows the frustration and then builds a stronger disconnect towards the change we want to achieve.
Other than that, let's hop into the episode. Hello.
Hi. Hello. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Very good. The sun is shining in Amsterdam, so that already makes it a good day in itself.
It's morning over there, isn't it? It's about
Yeah.
9:30, isn't it? Yeah, it's
Uh,
7 o'clock here.
yeah. Okay. So you're ending your day. I'm starting my day.
Yeah. No, it's good. It's good. How have you been?
Yeah, good. Traveling a lot. I've been working on the book quite a bit, bringing it to all sorts of different audiences, which has been really exciting. But no, I'm really looking forward to the conversation. Thank you so much also for taking the time and like coordinating with the team on finding a time
That's all
that
right.
works. So
That's all right. It's always lovely to communicate with your team. Since we last spoke with you 2 years ago, you've obviously moved to Amsterdam from the last time you were in Bali. So, what brought that up?
well, yeah, the move to Amsterdam had many reasons to it. One of the biggest was I was in the process of writing my book, and my publishers are HarperCollins Holland. So I decided to move here to be closer to that process of writing my book. But I also grew up my whole life on an island. I love Bali, and it made me who I am. But exploring a city and trying a different environment in my early 20s is something new and exciting and was just right for me. And so, yeah, that's one of the reasons why I moved to Amsterdam.
Probably a bit more colder though.
Yeah, definitely. Oh my goodness, I had to get used to the weather. I had to get used to the changing seasons. We never had spring or autumn. So it was quite cool also to experience this, not passing through a city, but really trying to make it a home and a feeling of being here for a while.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you have.
Mhm.
We'll talk on the book. I think I'll bring it up to the camera if I can. So, yeah, we can see that, can't we? There. Yeah. So it's a beautiful book. How long did it take us to read? I reckon, Charles? Couple months, I think. Couple months, yeah. And it was just really described your journey through your early life and upbringing, through building your businesses and your lifestyle as a change maker. But what inspired you to write the book?
Well, I started when I was 12 years old. I'm 25 now. I just turned a couple months ago. And I think the reason why I wanted to write a book, specifically write a book with a lot of my lessons in it, as you know, the book has 100 of my lessons from 12 to 24 years old. And I think the reason why I wanted to do that is because I sat down one day writing a diary entry, as simple as that, of like, okay, this is what I experienced. This is what I learned from it. And after writing alone, I had a conversation with friends, and people were really like, there's so much that you would have learned across your decade-long activism journey. Why don't you want to share? Like, how can you share that with more people in a different medium than, for example, on social media or through just conversations with friends. So I thought, yeah, maybe a book could be a cool way to
Mm.
embody all of those lessons learned. And I ended up with a list of 100, which was really not the plan. But it was just, I wrote one lesson after another. And next thing you know, my editor's like, okay, slow down. I think 100 is enough. Right.
Oh, good.
So yeah, it was really written with this intention of sharing everything that I had learned over the last decade in my youth activism and how I believe others can do it too.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we were reading the book, it seemed like it was a bit of a call to action for world leaders to see what young people are capable of. Was that the intention when writing the book?
Definitely. There's a strong emphasis as well in the book on this intergenerational collaboration, right? We know
Yeah.
as young people, we cannot do it alone. We need the support of the private sector, the public sector. We need to have mentorships from all different walks of life. But I also really wanted to create a strong message that young people are also not only an inspiration, right? Which is what we're
Mm.
seeing now, very much in terms of the messaging of young people can do it. Young people are so inspiring. But hang on a second, there's a lot of hard work that goes into our activism. There's a lot of seriousness when we go to these different rooms with a message and a purpose in mind. So I think I really wanted to platform that by also showing examples of role models within the youth space that are tackling the challenges different than I did, right? So at the end of the 100
Yeah.
lessons book, there's that list of 100 names of different change makers with different styles of change making. And I thought that was really important to paint the picture exactly as you said, that there's this incredible grit when it comes to the power of our generation.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, absolutely. Do you feel that you regained a lot of courage in writing this book and sharing your experiences and your, I guess, personal stories and writing the
Oh,
book?
definitely, definitely. You know, writing a book, it's quite a reflective journey, especially because of how I
Mm,
decided to write the book, reflecting on my experiences. I spent months just going through my old diaries, for example.
mm,
And there are poems throughout the book that I write like at 12 years old, at 13, and it was such a experience for me to also, after being on the front lines for a decade, you kind of sometimes like I lost sight of the 12-year-old Melati, who was like really brave, you know, wouldn't take no for an answer. And so I
mm.
think in the reflection of writing the book, I got to reconnect with that, you know, change maker within me at 12
Yeah.
years old, who had no limitations. And I found that quite the opportunity to rebuild my courage. So definitely it's a yes to your answer.
Yeah. Did you find it difficult to share those personal stories when writing the book?
Yeah, it's also always a little bit weird because I sometimes also feel like the book is like just an open, vulnerable space where I take everyone through a lot of the successes, but also a lot of the challenges that I experienced. And it was hard, but I also think that I wrote it in a way that hopefully other people not only can relate to it, but I think in being vulnerable, people can also say, okay, we learn from mistakes or we learn from failures, and that's become a really big um, vision and mission for me at the moment when I do talks or go to schools and host workshops. It's really also about creating those spaces um, to share failures, to share vulnerable moments, because I learned that through writing the book and being vulnerable, it opens up a lot more conversations, and conversations and that are powerful to help build resilience and build courage, like you were asking in the last few
Yeah.
questions, right?
Mm. Yeah. No, absolutely. Have you had any change makers or anyone, people reach out to you that have resonated with the book or resonated with the message?
Yeah, and really countless occasions. I've had so many beautiful messages from all corners of the world, actually,
Mm,
of students who really, you know, there's also this um, maybe this like potential where when you look at change makers who are successful, who have really created and implemented change, sometimes you can feel disconnected from it or far away, that yeah, you know, I could never do that. But because in the book you hear about the failures, you hear about how I started and I had this massive team all of a sudden, but that caused me to like almost have this paralysis, or the encounters I had with CEOs that, you know, question my being in those rooms. I think those encounters made it human and made it in
mm,
that way relatable also, because it wasn't always easy. I didn't always end up being in those spaces without the challenges that came with it. So I've had students, other activists reaching out and saying it was so refreshing to read because I had this the other day, or I'm scared to go through that, because they didn't understand that that's actually part of the journey, right?
yeah.
As much as there's, you know, the celebration of community, joy, love, there's also a lot of difficult things that go through a change maker's journey. And I think being open and honest about those things allowed other people to feel invited into the movement.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you been on a book tour with this book at all? Did you go to, like, yeah.
Yeah, I did. Well, it's so because this was my first book that I
Mm,
published. It was also my first time experiencing what it was like to bring a book, and it's really shown me that a book is a beautiful tool as well, to tour around. I published here in the Netherlands, and then I went around to different cities here, different universities, traveled to different cities in Europe, and then took it back home to Asia, where I did a little bit of a book tour there. And it's been really exciting because what I love about the book is that it's a conversation starter, right?
mm,
I'll read a couple of poems. I'll open with a couple of chapters, pose big questions of what those chapters were about, and then the conversation that it brings has really been how I recharge my energy, and how I
yeah,
recharge my faith into this movement, because I see everywhere around the world just how ready everyone is for change. So that's kind of restored my belief in the movement.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you come to Australia?
Not yet. So that's something that is on my bucket list, but no, I haven't been to Australia yet. Who knows?
Who knows? Who knows? Would love to see it. Um, what's one positive or one negative challenge with writing this book?
A positive for me in writing the book was it brought me a community that I didn't necessarily know I had because it was outside of a lot of the activism work. It was like a new community that suddenly gravitated through the book. So that was really
Mm,
beautiful. I felt like it expanded my network, expanded my community. It brought different people um, to the story and to the movement. And I think a negative in terms of like writing maybe the book and understanding it, it was a new world completely for me. I'm
mm,
not an author, like that wasn't really the trajectory that I was going for. So it was learning as I was going. And I found editing quite a journey. It was a lot of work to decide what to keep, what to take out, how to navigate
mm,
that. And that's where we, really leaned on the power of storytelling, because I wanted to stay focused with the book on lessons. I really, really wanted everyone to be able to read these stories and think, okay, here was the goal, here was the challenge, and this was how it was overcome, and that was resulting in a lesson. And yeah, but that was took, I think, the longest time because writing it, I would have a blank page and I could fill it with stories of experiences, of government meetings, of protests that I attended, of classroom presentations we built. But then choosing what to eliminate and what to keep, I found that almost the most challenging.
You describe a lot of your early life and upbringing in this book, especially at the start. What was your
Mm-hmm.
childhood like? What was it like growing
Yeah.
up on the Bali?
I mean, it's the entire chapter one is this curious
Mm,
12-year-old, right? I think that's the
yeah.
name of the chapter. And I decided to do that because I know I wouldn't be who I am without growing up on Bali. And that's quite a big statement to say because, imagine if I grew up in Amsterdam or imagine if I grew up anywhere else in the
Mm,
world disconnected from nature. Um, I am who I am because nature was everywhere. And I learned at a young age, we are nature. That's lesson number one in the book,
mm,
right? Um, and that ended up shaping my entire change making pathway. And I loved growing up. It was the most beautiful gift my parents could have given me and my sister because
yeah.
we were so incredibly connected to nature, to um, the community, to the village we grew up in. It was so beautiful and so safe as well, which I think is in the first 10 lessons, right? Safety and
Mm,
the feeling of being safe allows you to um, be curious, explore, be adventurous. And if we didn't have that in our growing up environment, I don't think we would have landed in the world of activism, because
mm,
you need to be able to have that curiosity, to have that exploration mindset almost. But you can't do that if you don't feel safe. So Bali really, and especially the village where we grew up, really, really was a community that fostered and nurtured that aspect of our childhood.
yeah, absolutely. You speak on your parents quite a bit in those first couple of chapters as well about how they instilled those values of looking after nature. Do you think they had a massive impact on you, both your mum and your dad?
Yeah, definitely. Both my mom and dad had a massive impact on how we looked at nature, and it was always this story of partnership with nature and being part of nature. They could have also just as easily ignored a lot of the lessons that we had at school about the environment. I mean, we came home
Mm,
so curious after, a recycling facility came to visit our class and teach us how to separate our plastic. We would go home and take that class and turn it into 5 dinner table conversations for the next days, with our
yeah.
parents. And they really, again, like created that space to be curious, ask questions back, explore it even further, allow us to spend the whole weekend at the beach, and just uninterrupted play. And I think that is, was really special, but also in that
Mm,
space allowed me and my sister to become what we were, what we are.
yeah, absolutely. That leads us to, I'm going to read a bit of a passage out of your book here. So try and get over. Yeah, you can do that. Thank you. There's only one. You opened it straight away. That's brilliant. I love that. Can you hear me?
Yes, I
Right.
can. I'm excited for this.
So we're just going to ask you to sort of reflect on what this passage is about.
Mm-hmm.
I'll read. I sat crisscrossed in the morning crisp air, memorized by the magic of this big, living, breathing tree. It was so peaceful. It was so beautiful. It was so grounding. I remember thinking, I want to be like you, tree, when I grow up. I found a comfortable spot to sit on the veranda and admiring the tree in the golden morning light. I heard my sister, Isabel, come out of our room. She joined me where I sat on the veranda. We both smiled widely as we looked at each other. Our shirts were matching. Last night, our shirts for our campaign had arrived. We were so excited for the sun to come up to see them in this light. They looked better than we could ever imagine. Ready? I asked my 10-year-old sister. She nodded, and we helped each other. We helped each other up as we heard our mum in the kitchen preparing brekkie. Girls, breakfast is ready. We have to be in the car in 20 minutes, otherwise you'll be late for school. Coming. We walked over proudly in our campaign shirts to show our parents just how good we looked. Look at you two, as our parents beamed with joy. After we finished brekkie, we grabbed our school bags, our homework from last night, our lunch boxes that were sitting on the kitchen table, and headed to the car. Wait, I said, can you take this picture? I wanted to remember this moment forever. My sister and I dropped our bags, ran to the temple in front of our magical tree, and proudly stood side by side. We puffed our chests out so anyone who ever looked at this moment could see our mission clearly. Our shirts read bye-bye plastic bags. This was day one of our mission, which entirely embodied our purpose. This is where it began, right there. I felt so proud. I felt it bursting out of me. At 10 and 12 years old, we were ready to do the right thing. There's no turning back now. It goes through your mind as I read that.
Mm. Well, it's a beautiful passage, and it was really also nice to hear someone else reading it for once. Usually it's me reading it out to an audience, you know, and I found it was quite a special experience. So thank you for picking that passage. I think what's going through my mind, yeah, all these emotions actually of what that moment was like. I have a beautiful memory to that tree growing up, you know, the one that I would look at in the mornings. We have this really beautiful natural golden light, like I say it in the thing, but it's this, it almost feels like a warm honey like spilling over our house. And we got to see that every morning, waking up that early to go and prepare for school. So it really, it brings me back to this, what I already shared of like this connection to nature growing up. And then having this confidence, this absolutely nothing can be in our way. We're gonna reach our goal determination of a 12-year-old girl.
Yeah, yeah. There's like because you do describe the struggles after that. Yeah. So there's like a beautiful naivety there as well, which is a curious, what a curious 12-year-old would have. Yeah, thinking any kid has that. Yeah, about to embark on that journey.
Exactly.
In the foreword of the book, so right at the start, who wrote Christina Vegas? Is that it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Forget it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She described you as like a driven leader, defiant optimism. Do you believe you were born with these characteristics, or you learnt these along the way?
Ooh, that's good. I mean, you just mentioned, right? Every kid sort of has this innate sense of curiosity. You know, you're born into the world, you explore, and you think, you know, why is the sky blue? Why do the birds sing? You know, all these questions come naturally because you're curious. You don't know the answers to anything and everything. And so it opens you up to this moment of wanting to deeply learn. And you can ask yourself the question, how and why? Then as we grow older, less questions come up to us. And I think, you know, to some degree, yes, we are born with this curiosity, but what I've seen happen is the system and the world and the lifestyle we've created, or the culture almost we've created, starts to slowly pull that curiosity away from us, because there are rules, there are answers to the right questions, the wrong questions, when there seriously is no such thing as a wrong question. But there is this culture that we've created that doesn't allow for curiosity to grow, right? And so I think we're all born with it, but not all of us are lucky enough to grow up holding on to it. And I think that's the job of a lot of change makers, is to, through storytelling and through leading by example, right? We are slowly starting to paint the picture again of what if, right? What if we do begin to ask questions? What if we start to explore this possible future, right? And so it's almost painting this new narrative again of being proud of that curiosity, right? Even if imagine if you're a CEO of a company, in that position more than ever, you need to be curious. You need to be having a full, happy imagination, because if we can't work towards the world and the future we want, if we can't see it, we can never work towards it. And that's, kind of nicely how chapter 1 and chapter 10 almost tie each other back. It's just chapter 10 is the last chapter, right? And it loops very much into this need for more spaces to foster and nurture curiosity.
Yeah, absolutely. How did you meet Christina?
We have been in, her work is largely known to this milestone of achieving the Paris Agreement, which is where all the countries at the United Nations signed an agreement in 2015 in Paris at the climate conference. And I was in the audience in that moment. We were all there campaigning on the streets, working towards this goal. And when that moment was achieved, that was someone who I really looked up to, in the sense of speaking truth to power and then actually mobilizing within the system. I mean, was remarkable. And so from that moment on, as a 15-year-old girl, I had found myself in many different conferences with the activism work, and there she was almost all the time in the different events that we would go to. And so we'd been following each other's work. And then more recently, just at the timeline of when the book was being written and published, I joined the Plum Village retreats, their first ever climate cohort in Asia, which is what Christina leads with her team in different parts of the world. And that for me was a moment to step back, to reflect as well. And it was a beautiful jump board moment, because it was at the start of my writing process, to really give gratitude back to the community of the climate movement. And so I thought that she was the perfect person who had sort of seen this also evolution of a young girl into who I am now, to write the foreword of the book.
Yeah, it was a beautiful choice. I'll give you that. Very good.
Yeah.
You describe in the book the first time you ever saw plastic landfill. What emotions went through you at that moment, and did it help you ignite a drive or a fire in you to start your journey?
Definitely. Have you ever been to a landfill?
No, I haven't.
No? Well, so that's also the section of that in the book is quite, I would imagine, quite graphic, right? I talk about cows and birds flying over, the cows grazing at the plastic beneath the feet, the crunch as you took every step. It's quite a graphic scene, because I really understood that not everybody finds themselves at a landfill, right? But in reality, me being on that mountain at such a young age, I thought, oh my goodness, what is this, And so the emotions that it evoked was really, there was so much going on. There was sadness, there was frustration, there was disgust, right? I looked at this and thought, animals leave beautiful footprints and marks as they leave their homes or migrate or whatnot. The feathers, the footprints, there's a beautiful mark that they leave on the earth. And I looked at this mountain of plastic and I thought, this is our mark. And so there was this real deep disgust, this frustration, but it also motivated me a lot. There was I couldn't unsee anymore what I saw. And that was a moment for me to say, okay, how are we going to make sure that if not everyone can at least come and see this, how do we tell these stories and amplify so that we can do something to stop it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it obviously started that journey because when you started Bye Plastic Bags, did you run into any challenges when you were starting to build this momentum to get it off the ground? I think there was a passage in the book, something about being in an airport and you would have what's the word I'm looking for? Um, don't you hate that? Yeah. Um, yeah.
I mean, yeah, so the challenges which you're maybe touching on is that scene where one of the first goals we said we would achieve was getting a petition with as many signatures as possible.
That's it. Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. Petitions.
Yeah, and so
There you go.
exactly. And so, one of the challenges there was, we set an impossible, well, what then really also already felt impossible. We set 1 million signatures without knowing how big 1 million actually was. And we thought we would literally get pen to paper 1 million signatures. Now we got creative with this goal, and we managed to work up towards getting the approval of walking through the departure gates of the people who had visited Bali, and maybe were the ones that would say yes to signing quickly because they had experienced the plastic pollution crisis. And so we got creative with those challenges, but still what we realized when we set our goal, or what we didn't realize when we set our goal, was how much time, energy was going to go into the campaign. We had naively thought we would achieve the goal before summer break was over and before the school year started. But little did we know, we were entering a whole movement of many like-minded people who agreed, yes, Bali should be plastic bag free. But how are we going to build enough momentum to convince the policymakers and actually get this into a policy change? So I think there were many challenges in the start of our activism, throughout our activism, and those are reflected in the book in various different moments.
Yeah. No, and you wrote in your book the Australians were usually the quickest to sign up. Which I like.
I mean,
I thought, well,
yeah.
that's just classic, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I talk a lot about that. It almost was like a social experiment, having access to such an international pool of people. And we always we tried to also keep it fun. I mean, we were teenagers, or not even yet, but really just running around trying to make a competition of who could get the most signatures. And then you would end up at the gate boarding to Australia, or end up at the gate boarding to Singapore. And there was such a diverse group of responses as well. And so that's where that social experiment aspect in the book really comes to life.
Yeah, we love that. It's beautiful. What during probably a little bit after this time, I think you might have been in your early 20s or maybe 18, 19, you started a company called Youthopia. What made you want to start that company?
So with bioplastic bags, we were traveling around to so many different classrooms around the world, and we shared what we were doing. And the number one question always came after that, which was, how can I do what you do? And it really didn't matter anymore whether we were in a classroom in Hong Kong or a classroom in the Maluku Islands. It was always, how can I do what you do? And so there was this growing interest in me of saying, okay, how do we create a platform where young people can learn from each other how to create change, right? I mean, so many people from our generation want to create change, and they have a good idea, but they don't know where and how to get started. So what Youthopia is, it's a learning platform where we've created over 300 programs with now a network of almost 10,000 students who access the learning material. These are master classes or workshops from young change makers who have created change, and they share their how. So you want to learn how to convince your government on protecting wildlife. Well, learn from Aishwarya, Sridhar, and Gab Mejia, who take photographs of wildlife and bring it into decision-making rooms. You want to learn how to get better at public speaking? Well, there's a masterclass by me. And I share about, all the different stages that I've been on. There's masterclasses on climate anxiety from Clover Hogan. There are beautiful programs from Lucy and Sophie, who talk about the world of politics, entering that space as a young person, what they would have done differently. So it's really taking the lived experiences of change makers and sharing the blueprint of how they did it, so that the hope is other young people all around the world who are just starting their change-making journey can learn how to as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Running the full-time company at 18, what were some of the challenges that you faced during that time?
Yeah, well, I freshly graduated high school and went full-time into building up Youthopia. And I think some of the challenges were that I really had no idea what I was doing. And this was also something, if you look at the education system, it's not designed for someone to go straight from high school to building their own thing. Right? Like, okay, how do we, the hiring and firing process, for example, how do you find the right team members and fit the person with the role? How do you, the paperwork that's involved, the countless government meetings that we were involved in as, within the advocacy work we were doing. But I think for me, one of the bigger challenges was that I had designed, or I had moved from a sort of volunteer-led team to a full-time team. And that all happened in the same time as graduating high school and then focusing full-time on Youthopia. And so that transition for me, which I write about in the book, was quite challenging to navigate because it just meant growing up as well. It meant taking on more responsibility. I talk about, in the book, I write about the power of making decisions. That was something I struggled with. As a leader within the organization, people would come to me left and right about all sorts of decisions, and small decisions, big decisions, but making a decision was what I learned the most important. And I think that's something for our generation often as well, this paralysis moment of having so many options as well, right? We live in a time where think about something as simple as going to the supermarket. You want to pick out which milk you're going to take, which protein bar you want to eat, which broccoli you want. And there's a million different options, right? So there's almost this overwhelming options complexity that is happening. But making a decision for me in a leadership context as well was what I learned and had to go over the challenges to just, after I made the decision, even if it wasn't necessarily the right decision, I would only learn once I had made that decision in the first place. So I learned a lot by doing, and that wasn't perhaps a lot of the CEOs or big organizations follow certain SOPs, follow certain guidelines to get where they are today. But hey, I think our generation is big on learning by doing, because we know that we can't wait, right? We don't have the privilege of time. We have to have the courage, we have to have the energy and the momentum, but also the team, right? So I talk a lot about in the book about the challenges that I had as a leader, but something that maybe I didn't emphasize enough of in the book is actually where I find myself today very, very grateful to have the right team around me, right? And that makes a world of difference. Having the right team around you, the people who can see the vision, also can experience the failures, but say, we're not giving up. And I think there's so much power and momentum in that. So I hope anyone going through the challenges always at least surrounds themselves with the right people to support them.
Yeah, absolutely. In the earlier days, did you find it better if you had a team around you to make those decisions, like going to everyone and then making a decision, or just making a decision on the spot?
No, definitely. My approach is always to have as many conversations and all of the information complete and correct. And so that's where a lot of peer-to-peer feedback or community feedback, I would call them my mentors. I would have conversations with other people in similar positions. And that's also really important, like crowdsourcing almost your pathway forward, right? Like understanding option A, option B, option C, having all of that presented to you in a clear and complete way. And then in that moment, when you have all of that, you can make the decision. But it doesn't come on the spot, and it doesn't come through one conversation. For me, what has helped navigating that process is leaning on mentors, leaning on team, leaning on all the different options, and envisioning what comes out through each decision.
Yeah, it's a collaborative process. And with the wins and losses that you had with both companies, not just Youthopia, but Bye Plastic Bags, are you ultimately grateful for the wins and losses?
Definitely. I think, you can always be really proud of the happy achievements in life, but also the challenging achievements for me almost outshine that because it really tests character, it tests your resilience, it tests your commitment. And I think it shapes stronger who you become and who you are. It tells a lot about your connectedness to the movement. And I think I'm forever grateful, not only for the lessons but also for the people, because we've been through a lot of challenging moments. When the law didn't pass for 6 years in the beginning, I mean, people could have also given up, but they didn't. They stayed. They gave as much energy. The team of Bye Bye Plastic Bags, we worked with incredible young coordinators in all parts of the world who would champion the work of bioplastic bags. So this is when I say, okay, I learned a lot, but it is thanks to all the people that I had around me that didn't give up just as much as I didn't want to give up.
Takes a village, really, at the end of the day.
It does.
You describe your lifestyle as a change maker with all this success that's come in the last few years. What are some of the tough moments that people don't see?
There's a lot of tough moments, and I think there are conversations where I get off stage, for example, and people really have this debate, this ongoing challenge as to why we shouldn't create change. There's still a lot of people out there who believe that climate change is a natural process that we have to go through, or that we should keep plastic because it's healthier than not using plastic. And everybody is entitled to their own views and perspectives, but I think what I have the biggest challenge, or where my exhaustion comes from after doing this for more than 10 years, is when there is an inability to sit down and listen to each other. So I think for me, the challenge has been to hold spaces for these conversations to happen. Then also, what I've seen as well is that when the conversation agrees and there's a promise made or a goal set, and I'm talking then from big governments or big corporations, we think, yes, then the job is done. We did it. For example, the ban on single-use plastic bags in Bali, is that implemented? If you walk down to a regular supermarket or through a market in Bali, you will get a plastic bag. So something's not working, something's not happening. And it's this bridge that's not built on implementing a lot of the changes that we see being made on big stages. So that's for me a big challenge, to then keep on going, find the motivation to not give up, because as hard as we try, as much as we keep going, if things are not actually being implemented to change everyday life, that just grows a frustration and then builds a stronger disconnect towards the change we want to achieve.
It'd be frustrating. It would be, for sure. Obviously, you've been a change your own maker for over 10 years now. It would seem like that you've probably experienced burnout before. How do you find yourself getting out of it?
Yeah, that's
What are some of the tips you use?
That's a good one. And I write in the book a lot about this idea that I thought there was a quick fix, right? I would get burnt out every year around the same period. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to go to a silent retreat. I'm going to go connect with nature, and then that's it. But honestly, I think we have to reverse, or I have to reverse my way of thinking and looking at it. It wasn't supposed to be one time going to a retreat or one time just relaxing for a couple of days off, but instead like trying to implement rest moments throughout your entire year that allow you not to feel burnt out. And there are a couple of things here that I think, especially as activists and young change makers, if you're listening to this, it's about, one, understanding there's a community around you. There's so many beautiful people doing every single day great work. So you're not alone. And if you need to step back and rest, do it, because others will continue the work while you are resting and recharging for you to come back to the movement better than ever. And that's really important because it takes the pressure off of receiving that rest in the first place. I've turned the book into a minor program, that I teach at universities. And there's one whole week within that program that I talk about rest and the power of doing nothing. right? Because I also think that if we are only constantly on hyperdrive of thinking we need to create change, we got to do this, there's this deadline and this travel that we need to do and this governor we need to convince, oh my goodness, it's exhausting. But in this week of rest, we cover 7 types of rest. And that's a study that was created a while ago of understanding what the human body and human mind actually need to reverse back to that point of what we talked about in the first few chapters, this feeling of safety to explore. If you're in hyperdrive, you're never feeling safe. You're acting from a moment of reaction. So these 7 types of rest cover things like screen rest, for example. In a digital world, we don't even think about it. When we're scrolling, that's not resting, right? You're overstimulating yourself and senses. So there's the rest of physical rest, right? Not going for that workout because you actually just need to rest. There's the sleep rest. And I don't know all of them off the top of my head, so I'm not going to try. But the framework, it's called 7 types of rest, and you can take a look at that. But my point being really to get out of that burnout from what I've learned is to implement rest points throughout, and then different types of rest, learning how to listen to your body and identify which ones. But then also really just remembering that you are existing in a community and an ecosystem that allows you to do this. That's the world that our generation is trying to build. We do not want to repeat the same rat race of competition of our previous generation. We want to try to see how do we establish a world where instead of the ego, right? And this is a beautiful image in your mind that you can make, the ecosystem, which is a triangle with the human on top and the whole world of all the other species, the other plants, all beneath us as we are the higher self, right? The ego system, a triangle. And nature, what can we learn from nature? Nature is not an ecosystem, but an ecosystem. And it's a circle where humans and animals and all the biodiversity that exists in the world have to be equally as healthy, equally as strong, equally as empowered to be able to nourish each other, right? We cannot eat healthy if the world is not healthy. We cannot sport healthy, go for a run if our air pollution is unhealthy. So connecting planetary boundaries with our human health system allows us also to understand moving away from burnout needs to have a reflection on what we can learn from nature as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have like social networks or mentors that you can go to when you do experience that type of burnout? I think I remember you describing something called like a grandma group. Is that your group of mates?
Yeah, my hot grandma group. Yeah, that is. I have a lot of different groups of friends, and I talk about that in the book of like what I felt weird having different groups of friends, but at the same time, really allowing me to be different people to different, and different, not to be different. So what I mean is to meet with different people and just experience different, emotions, experiences. And my hot grandma group is my girlfriend group in Bali. We grew up together. And yeah, that's my girl group on the island. My change maker friends are all over the world. I mean, I have a conference in this city in Europe, and I'll meet with a friend there for lunch. If I have another event or a workshop that I'm doing in the city of Hong Kong, for example, then I will meet with friends and change makers that are there. So it's actually it's become this beautiful network of people to lean on for different things.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. Grandma group, though. That's a good name. It's a good name. It's a great name. What's that? The immature people.
Yeah, the immature.
So there you go. Your friends bring you back down to earth. That's just a beautiful thing about that.
They do.
You've mentioned you feel like you're the oldest youth in the room now when you go to these conferences and stuff. When did you start to see that young people were starting to take action on these sort of issues?
I mean, young people throughout history have also always been at the forefront of creating change. But the cool thing is that because I started at such a young age, and now I'm 25, it's more than half of my life that I've been involved in creating change and pushing for this movement. I love it that I'm one of the older ones now in the room, right? Because it's like it shows this track record that what we've been doing for the last decade is working, right? Now more than ever, companies and government alike are understanding that they need to include the voices of young people, no longer excluding them. And I feel really excited for this moment in time, but also there's another side of the story, which is the youth washing that I also see happening, right? And that is where, you know, this tokenization of young people being inspirational. Look, I think it starts with that invitation of giving us a stage, giving us a platform, but there are other steps that need to happen in order to have true intergenerational collaboration happening. And in the book, I think chapter 6 and 7 are completely about this intergenerational aspects, because yes, we know we cannot do it alone, but the how is still something that a lot of us are figuring it out, right? And I almost want to explain this time as we're figuring it out, as the training wheels on a bicycle, right? And only through error and success stories will we understand the formula of what that looks like. But I think it starts with a conversation, off screen, off stage, in a really meaningful way for what does the young people within that community want to achieve, and how can these other generations support, whether it's through company or whether it's through government. You know, there's access to all these different resources that would really help young people, whether it's funding, whether it's mentorship opportunities. So there's a lot more than just inviting young people and giving us the stage. It's about building this relationship that builds on each other's strengths. Gen Z being very, you know, I would almost think like forward, future thinking with this deep passion for the environment and for each other. This, of course, the technology side of the Gen Z, but then also looking at other generations and thinking about the networks that they've established, the other additional resources that they have, and kind of bridging those two things together, not to bring it down, but to bring it up.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Do you believe that applying self-care to your daily habits has allowed you to make better decisions as a change maker or as a leader in journey?
Definitely. And look, self-care looks different for everybody. And on my, you know, in my self-care routine, every day it looks different, because understanding what you need in that moment is really important. If I need to rest and I can't go for my run that I had envisioned, and I decide to stay in instead of going out, instead of looking at that as a failure, I look at that as really progress, listening to my body and listening to what I need in that moment. And that hasn't always come easy, but I think through time and through the burnouts and through the experiences, it gets easier and easier to listen to, right? Sometimes self-care looks like, you know, keeping the calendar day free and just doing, you know, what you enjoy, like reading a book or going for a walk. Or, you know, in other days for me, self-care is just hanging out with friends instead of going to a conference that I could have gone to. Or on other sides, I'm going to a conference and the self-care is saying yes to going to a school presentation in the area of the conference. So that's why I say it looks different for everyone, but it can also look different on different days. So it's just about being super kind and creating this space where you are able to listen.
Yeah, in a way, how has like sort of self-love sort of shaped your journey as a change maker?
Yeah, this has been something that is, for me, always really easy to have this love for the world that we live in, right? The nature. I mean, growing up in Bali, I talked so much about this wonderful nature we had access to. But I think the journey within self-love was also something where I had to learn that it had to be just as much inwards as it was outwards. And that was something that over time and over all the experiences and the frustrations of building a team, not building a team, reaching the goals, not reaching the goals, another year down, that was all something that throughout the journey, that self-love had to be strong. And if it wasn't wavering, I would also realize that there was a lot more work inwards to do.
Yeah. Melati, we've come towards the end. Thank you for coming on again. Hopefully, we'll do this again in maybe another 2 years' time. Maybe you can have another movie come out or something, and we'll review that. But it's been a privilege.
Yeah,
I usually ask
on the book tour, or who knows, or on the book tour in Australia. We never know.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I usually ask the question, what advice would you give to your younger self? But I think I'm going to bring it back to the last time we spoke 2 years ago. That answer to that question was pacing yourself and celebrating the little wins. Does that still relate?
Definitely, it still relates. And I think what is also a nice little add-on to compare, 2 years ago and this year, is to celebrate the little wins. But I think there is also that element of self-love and that kindness that needs to be on board, because it's not only the pacing yourself and the patience you have to the overall movement, it's also allowing those spaces of kindness, of softness, of stillness in such a busy world where we have, as change makers, such a long to-do list, and allowing yourself to be kinder to yourself and to the movement, to your team, to everyone around you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, whoever is watching this, whether it's you're a change maker or just someone who's looking to buy another book, please buy this book, Change Starts Now. It was an absolute beautiful read, and you've been a beautiful guest. So thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure, and I always love chatting with you guys. So thanks for platforming and pushing the book forward. And yeah, see you on the next achievement.
Take care. Right? Enjoy.
All right. Thank you so much.